Welcome to our podcast. I'm your host, Luca, and I'm excited to have you join us for today's episode. Before we dive in, I hope you're all doing great out there.
Thanks for having me. I'm doing fantastic today and really looking forward to our conversation.
That's wonderful to hear. Let's jump right into today's fascinating discussion. So, I've got something super exciting for you today, and I just can't wait to dive right in. You know, we're gonna tackle something that literally affects all of us at some point. Getting stuck in our comfort zones and, dealing with laziness.
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm literally so pumped to talk about this topic. You have no idea how many people I've helped break free from this exact situation, and it's absolutely incredible to see the transformation.
I mean, you're basically the expert when it comes to this stuff, right? And I know our listeners are gonna get so much value from your insights.
That's so sweet of you. But you know what's really interesting about this whole comfort zone thing? It's actually it's something we all struggle with, right? Even the most successful people have to constantly push themselves to avoid falling into that trap.
That's exactly why we're doing this episode of Stop Laziness today. I've got so many questions for you about this whole topic. So Anna, let's start with the basics here. What exactly is a comfort zone? Break it down for us.
Oh gosh, okay. So, a comfort zone is basically like the psychological state where everything feels safe and familiar, right? And it's actually super interesting because our brains are literally wired to keep us there. It's this space where we don't feel any anxiety or stress, you know what I mean.
That's really fascinating. But why do we get so stuck there?
So, the thing is, our brains absolutely love predictability, they're totally obsessed with it. When we're in our comfort zone, we're basically running on autopilot, and our brain is like, yes, this is perfect, let's stay here forever. Because, change is basically a threat to our brain's security system.
Tell me more about what's actually happening in our minds.
Right, so it's actually super interesting from a psychological perspective. When we try to step outside our comfort zone, our brain literally, triggers these stress responses, right? And it releases cortisol and all these other chemicals that make us feel uncomfortable. So we're basically fighting against our own biology when we try to push ourselves,
And I'm guessing this is where the laziness part comes in.
Exactly. Our brain is totally trying to conserve energy, right? And staying in our comfort zone is it's so much easier. It takes literally zero effort to just keep doing what we've always done. But here's the crazy thing. This same mechanism that once protected us is now actually holding us back from growing and achieving our full potential. You know what I mean.
You know what I'm really curious about? Anna, how can someone tell if they're actually stuck in their comfort zone?
Oh my gosh, okay. So there are these super clear signs that you're totally stuck, right? First off, you're stuck when you're constantly, making excuses. That whole I'll do it tomorrow thing, and tomorrow never actually comes.
That definitely hits close to home.
Right. And another huge sign is when you're feeling, completely unmotivated about everything. Those days when you just sit there scrolling through your phone for hours, and you should be doing something else but you just can't seem to get started.
That's exactly what happens to me sometimes. What other signs should we watch out for?
So, there's this really interesting thing that happens where people start avoiding any kind of challenge, right? They'll literally turn down opportunities because they're just too comfortable where they are, and they'll come up with these super creative reasons why it's not the right time, you know what I mean.
Tell me more about how this shows up in daily life.
Okay, so, in daily life it shows up in these really subtle ways, right? Hitting the snooze button over and over, or always ordering the exact same thing at restaurants, or, and this is a big one, never trying new things at work. You basically create these little routines that feel super safe, but they're actually keeping you stuck,
That's really eye-opening. It seems like these patterns can be pretty sneaky.
Oh my gosh, yes. And the sneakiest part is that it all feels totally normal, right? we convince ourselves that we're just being practical or realistic, when really, we're just letting our comfort zone get smaller and smaller, and before we know it, we're stuck in this tiny little box of what feels safe.
So Anna, what are some actual strategies we can use to break free from these patterns?
Oh my gosh, okay, so, the absolute best way to start is something I call the 5-minute rule, right? And it's super simple. You just commit to doing something for 5 minutes, that's it. Because, anyone can do anything for 5 minutes, you know what I mean.
That actually sounds pretty manageable.
Totally. And here's the thing. Once you start, you usually end up doing way more than 5 minutes because, getting started is actually the hardest part, right? And another strategy that's absolutely game-changing is what I call micro-challenges.
What exactly are micro-challenges?
So, they're these tiny little challenges that push you just slightly out of your comfort zone, right? Like maybe taking a different route to work or trying to talk to one new person each day. The key is to make them small enough that they don't totally freak you out, but big enough that you feel that little butterfly in your stomach, you know.
These sound really practical. What else can people try?
Okay, so another super powerful strategy is accountability partners. Find someone who's also trying to grow and make a pact to check in with each other regularly. Because when you know someone's waiting to hear about your progress, you're way more likely to actually do the thing, right?
That makes so much sense. Any tips for maintaining consistency?
Oh yes. So, the absolute key is to track your progress, but in a really simple way. Maybe just use a habit tracker app or even just make little notes in your phone. And the most important thing is to celebrate those small wins because that's what builds momentum, you know. Every tiny step forward is actually huge when you're breaking free from your comfort zone.
Hey, speaking of making positive changes, I want to take a quick moment to connect with all of you amazing listeners out there.
Oh yes, absolutely. And if you're loving these practical tips and strategies we're sharing on Stop Laziness, there's actually so much more where that came from.
We'd absolutely love for you to be part of our growing community over at the Englebright podcast channel.
Seriously, we put so much work into bringing you these super valuable insights and practical strategies every single week, you know. And trust me, we've got some absolutely amazing content coming up that's going to totally transform the way you approach personal growth, right?
Now, let's dive back into our discussion about breaking free from comfort zones. So Anna, I'd love to hear about some real success stories, you know, like people who have actually managed to break free from their comfort zones.
Oh my goodness, yes. I've got this, absolutely incredible example of my friend Sarah. And she was basically stuck in this job she totally hated for 5 years, right?
What happened with her?
So, she was absolutely terrified of change, you know what I mean. But then she finally took this massive leap and started her own business doing social media marketing. The first few months were, super scary for her, but now, she's literally making triple what she used to make.
That's amazing. Do you have any other examples?
Oh, totally. There's this other really powerful example of, this guy in my networking group, Mike. He was, super shy, couldn't even speak up in meetings, right? And he decided to push himself by volunteering to give presentations at work.
Did it help him?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Within 6 months, he was actually leading team meetings and even got promoted to a management position. The crazy thing is, he tells me now that public speaking is actually his favorite part of the job. Can you believe that?
That's such a powerful transformation.
Right. And the really interesting thing about both these cases is that the discomfort only lasted for a few weeks, you know, but the benefits, they're still experiencing them years later. It's that temporary discomfort is totally worth the long-term rewards. Do you know what I mean?
Anna, this has been such an eye-opening conversation, and I think we should give our listeners some things to really think about.
Oh, absolutely. I think it would be super helpful for our amazing listeners to, and really reflect on some important questions, you know what I mean.
What kind of questions do you have in mind for them?
So, First off, I want everyone to think about what's that one thing you've been putting off because it feels like totally uncomfortable, and what's the absolute worst that could happen if you tried it?
That's a great question to start with.
Right, and here's another one. Think about, where do you want to be in 6 months from now? Because, staying in your comfort zone definitely won't get you there.
I'd love to hear our listeners' thoughts on these questions in the comments section below.
Oh my goodness, yes. And please share your own stories about breaking free from your comfort zone. Because, that would be totally inspiring for everyone else too.
Before we wrap up, we'd really appreciate if you could engage with these questions and share your experiences with us. Your insights could help someone else take that first step.
Absolutely. And remember, discomfort is, totally temporary, but regret, that can last forever. You know what I mean.
Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Stop Laziness. Until next time.
Bye everyone. And remember, step out of that comfort zone even if it's just a tiny step today. You've totally got this.